com- companies are rushing to get access to those critical minerals. Credible research conducted by both African organizations but also international NGOs in last 15 years are clear. The mining exploitation has a huge negative impact on communities but also on the environment. Many cases have been reported in terms of pollution, human rights violation, but also forced eviction. In this session, we are aimed to hear frontline voices, but also there will be a publication of the report on the topic which has is named "I will be do anything to stay here." I would like also to inform you, in terms of participants, we have more than 150 participants online. So there is an additional of people who are in the room. So I have with me 4 panelists. So welcome to you. I will start with Amadou Ba, who is the Executive Director of Action Mine. Is one of the African Strong Voices, and his organization is also member of the African Coalition on Green Minerals. So welcome, Ba. We have Dustin Rosa, who is the Researcher Director of Inclusive Development International. Welcome, Dustin. And also we have Mariama Bari, is also the African Program Associate at Inclusive Development. Welcome. Lastly, Natalie Bugalski, who is also the Senior Legal and Policy Director. Welcome, Natalie. Yes, so I will come back to start with our session to Ba. Yes, I said. Yeah. Yeah, it's okay. So I come back to Ba, who, as I said, is one of the African voices, critical voices, on this topic of energy transition. So Ba, my first question to you will be, what the energy transition mean for you as a Guinean? But also, what the mining impacts, mining activities impact on communities in Guinea.
Ok, merci, cher Emmanuel. Merci à tous les participants et merci à nos partenaires de IDI pour la co-organisation de ce panel important autour de la transition énergétique. Alors, avant d'abord de parler de la transition énergétique, je vais parler de la situation, du contexte de notre pays, la Guinée. La Guinée est un pays, bon, pour ceux qui ne le connaissent pas, qui est situé en Afrique de l'Ouest et qui est riche en ressources naturelles. Et parmi ces ressources naturelles, nous avons le fer, le diamant, l'or, et également le nickel, le graphite. Mais la plus répandue aujourd'hui, c'est la bauxite, puisque nous sommes le pays qui a plus de réserves de bauxite dans le monde. Et nous sommes en concurrence, bien sûr, dans ce sens avec l'Australie et bien sûr d'autres pays. Alors, la bauxite dont on parle, la Guinée, pour le moment, produit entre 103 millions et 150 millions de tonnes de bauxite par an, et qui est disséminée à travers le monde, bien sûr. Une partie, 89%, est vendue en Chine, et le reste est vendu, bien sûr, en Allemagne, en Espagne, en France, aux États-Unis, un peu au Canada et en Inde. Mais cette bauxite, qu'est-ce qu'elle représente pour nous? C'est une source majeure de revenus pour la Guinée, mais également une source de difficultés en fait pour certaines communautés locales. L'État mise sur la bauxite pour un peu corriger les déficits budgétaires, mais cette substance qui aide l'État à remplir ses caisses vide de l'autre côté le grenier du paysan, du citoyen qui est impacté. Donc, ce qui fait qu'aujourd'hui, quand on parle de transition énergétique, c'est un concept qui est abstrait pour les communautés. Abstrait parce que les gens ne comprennent pas d'abord c'est quoi la trajectoire, c'est quoi la tendance, c'est quoi en principe les perspectives par rapport à la transition énergétique. Et je note bien que la bauxite est l'une des matières de base de la transition énergétique. Parce que la bauxite, c'est la matière première qui sert à fabriquer l'aluminium. Et qui parle de l'aluminium, c'est que l'aluminium entre dans la fabrication des éoliens, dans la fabrication des panneaux solaires, dans la fabrication des véhicules électriques, dans la fabrication des batteries, dans la fabrication des avions, dans la fabrication de plusieurs éléments, les boîtes de conserve et autres là. Alors, quand on parle de transition énergétique, ce que ça représente pour nous, en tant que communauté qui sont en fait impactées par les projets miniers, et je note qu'aujourd'hui, nous avons une dizaine d'entreprises qui exploitent la bauxite. Et parmi les plus importantes, vous avez la CBG et vous avez la SMB, la Société minière de Bokeh, qui est une société d'obédience chinoise. Alors, à ce jour, la transition énergétique pour nous rime avec la souffrance. Le monde afflue vers la Guinée pour s'approvisionner en bauxite, pour avoir de l'aluminium, pour sécuriser leur chaîne d'approvisionnement. Mais beaucoup de communautés souffrent de cette affluence, de cette ruée vers la bauxite, à travers la perte, bien sûr, des moyens de subsistance, notamment les ressources en eau, les terres, également les autres opportunités économiques qui étaient liées à l'agropastoralisme, qui sont perdues à cause de l'exploitation minière, ou encore de ses effets, notamment les impacts environnementaux et sociaux liés souvent au déplacement forcé des communautés locales. Ça, c'est une situation qui, pratiquement, met les citoyens dans une sorte de pensée perplexe, dans la mesure où on se demande, mais écoutez, quand le monde veut opérer une transition énergétique, c'est-à-dire quitter la consommation de fuel, disons, de fossiles, vers, bien entendu, des énergies propres ou des énergies vertes, alors l'une des matières de substitution, c'est la bauxite. Et cette bauxite, aujourd'hui, représente beaucoup pour les communautés, parce que c'est des champs qui sont investis, c'est bien sûr des cours d'eau qui sont affectés, c'est bien sûr d'autres pâturages qui sont affectés. Alors, les gens se demandent, est-ce que on est en train d'opérer une transition juste? Pour le moment, on se dit que la transition n'est pas en train d'avoir une trajectoire juste, dans la mesure où il n'y a pas de mesures concrètes allant dans le sens de protéger les droits des communautés. Et pour nous, il n'y a pas de transition juste quand d'un côté on fait pleurer les communautés et de l'autre côté on illumine le monde. Et d'ailleurs, ces communautés, ou en tout cas notre pays, ne constituent pas en fait les bénéficiaires de cette transition pour le moment, puisque nous achetons cher en fait les panneaux solaires pour pouvoir avoir accès à l'énergie. Nous vivons dans une pauvreté énergétique qui ne dit pas son nom, et nous n'avons pas les moyens de nous acheter aujourd'hui une Tesla, puisque le dispositif même ne nous permet pas d'avoir un véhicule électrique chez nous. Et tout cela constitue en fait des mesures qui vont dans le sens, bien sûr, de réduire les émissions en CO2, mais cette réduction impacte négativement les communautés, impacte négativement l'avenir de plusieurs générations, puisque chez nous, la richesse, c'est la terre, c'est les cours d'eau, c'est les pâturages, puisque les communautés vivent des activités agropastorales. Alors, nous pensons qu'il y a aujourd'hui nécessité de revoir ce dispositif à tous les niveaux, au niveau des entreprises minières, au niveau de l'État, bien sûr, pour revoir la régulation, la législation en vigueur par rapport à cela, pour être encore plus regardant sur les aspects environnementaux et sociaux, aux entreprises d'avoir une certaine responsabilité en termes de conduite vis-à-vis des communautés, mais également, de l'autre côté, ceux qui prêtent de l'argent à ces entreprises, mais aussi ceux qui achètent les produits venant de ces entreprises. Donc toute cette chaîne constitue la chaîne de responsabilité, c'est-à-dire en amont, bien sûr en aval, pour faire de sorte qu'il y ait en quelque sorte une symbiose des idées allant dans le sens de pouvoir opérer une transition juste. La transition n'est juste que quand chaque partie prenante trouve son compte, que les communautés soient respectées, consultées, impliquées, qu'elles soient une partie prenante à part entière des projets, qu'elles ne soient pas en fait des victimes à tout moment des projets, et que l'État qui a la responsabilité en fait de protéger les droits humains joue son rôle à travers ses institutions régaliennes, et que les entreprises mettent en œuvre en fait les normes les plus élevées en matière de protection des droits humains, sur les questions environnementales, sur les questions des droits socio-économiques, notamment la perte des moyens de subsistance qui constitue en fait un sérieux problème aujourd'hui dans notre pays. Donc la bauxite est une matière recherchée par le monde aujourd'hui, mais cette matière recherchée risque d'être en fait source de problèmes pour des millions et des millions de communautés impactées par en fait l'exploitation minière. Et ce qu'on peut dire, c'est qu'aujourd'hui, cette exploitation pratiquement soulève des aspirations pour l'État de pouvoir bien sûr jouer un rôle dans la chaîne d'approvisionnement mondiale de bauxite. Ça permet bien sûr au pays de jouer un rôle important sur cette chaîne et d'avoir une certaine influence géopolitique mondiale, si bien sûr on sait jouer nos cartes. Ça permet aux entreprises de sécuriser en fait leur chaîne d'approvisionnement et de pouvoir alimenter les raffineries ou en tout cas leurs clients qui achètent la bauxite. Ça permet normalement, en fait, à nos communautés d'avoir également des bénéfices partagés. Et qu'est-ce qu'on appelle bénéfices partagés? C'est-à-dire, c'est que les communautés doivent être au cœur du dispositif. C'est-à-dire, on ne doit pas décider sans les communautés. L'État ne doit pas accepter un projet sans que les communautés ne donnent leur aval et que pratiquement ça soit quelque chose d'inclusif où vous avez les trois parties qui travaillent ensemble, les autorités, les communautés avec la société civile bien sûr, mais également les entreprises pour avoir en fait des projets mûris et surtout beaucoup plus responsables.
Thank you so much, Ba. Thank you. We can applaud for Ba for this wonderful presentation. I'm going to Dustin, and we've just hear from Ba. Is saying that the energy transition is not fair for communities because of loss of land, pollution, and forced evictions. So there's no traduction? It's okay? Yes. So after listening to Bai's presentation, can you explain what did you find in your new report on CBG mine in Guinea?
Thank you, Emmanuel. So I'd like to talk a little bit about a specific mine that Amadou mentioned, the CBG bauxite mine, which is planning to expand, and what that means for the communities that are in the path of the expansion. So in 2023, CBG's then Director General said the mine was going to expand its bauxite production by about a third to meet the growing demand for aluminum for electric cars, EV batteries, and things like solar panels. So CBG is already one of the largest mines, bauxite mines in the world, and this expansion is going to make it just that much bigger. The mine is owned by four players. It's 3 companies that hold a majority stake of 51%. So these are the mining companies Rio Tinto and Alcoa, along with a firm called Dadco, which has business in Germany. So they hold 51%. And then the remaining 49% of minority share is controlled by the Guinean government. So CBG's corporate owners, those 3 companies I mentioned, take the bauxite from the mine and they export the vast majority of that bauxite and process it into aluminum in their vertically integrated supply chains. And then the aluminum then goes on to a range of customers, including car companies like BMW, Mercedes, Audi, GM, Ford, and Toyota, which you can see up there. And there are also renewable energy companies in that supply chain. So over the last year and a half, I visited villages in the likely path of the mine's expansion zone in northwestern Guinea. And I wanted to understand, what they knew about CBG and this plan to expand. And, did they know what happens when a mine comes to a village like theirs? Do they know how it's going to affect their homes, their land, their crops? And, what do they fear about mining coming? But also, what do they want to happen to their land? How would they try to protect it from the various serious impacts of mining? And how do they want to benefit from this really valuable mineral that's being extracted from land that their villages have occupied for generations? And, I just want to acknowledge, obviously, I should not be the one up here talking to you about these things. It really should be the community members from Guinea. And we did try to bring them here to speak on this panel, but we could not get them appointments at the Swiss embassy to get visas. However, you can read their stories, their hopes, their fears, their aspirations in a report that Emmanuel mentioned that we're releasing today. You can find that on our website, inclusivedevelopment.net. There are also copies in the room if you want to take a look. So CBG's mining concession is massive. It's about the size of Luxembourg. And up on the screen, you can see a map showing the boundaries of that concession, along with all of the villages that are in that mining concession. And so, during my time in Guinea, gathering information for this report, one of the things that was just so striking to me was the stark difference between the areas that have been mined by CBG and then the areas that have not yet been mined but are within the concession. So up on the screen, there's a satellite image that's really kind of a zoomed in view of part of that mining concession. And you can see there's a blue line going through the middle of the concession. That's the Kogan River. And it really kind of divides the concession in half. So on the northeast side, that big green area, that's where the mining has not happened yet. And you can see those 2 pins up there are villages that I visited, but they're in the expansion zone. And then southwest, on the other side of the Kogan, is where the mining has happened. And you can see all the brown spots, and this is all visible from space. But, I think those satellite images don't really capture what it's like to be on the ground and to actually see these mining areas up close. CBG has strip mined these areas really for decades, since the 1970s. As you kind of drive around these areas, you just see these massive brown open pits that are just stretching to the horizon. And they're really stripped of all signs of life. I mean, the trees, the topsoil, and really entire villages are just cleaved from existence. And as you can imagine, mining has just devastated the lives of people that live in these areas. CBG has grabbed community land without permission from local people, and runoff from the strip mining has polluted rivers and springs. And so, without access to fertile soil to farm, and without access to clean water, and also grazing areas for livestock, thousands of people have experienced declines in their living standards. And I just wanted to put 2 photos up on the screen that show what mining can do to water sources like rivers. So these 2 pictures show the same bend in a river that's south in the mining areas, just different times. So the one on the left obviously is clean, but the one on the right is full of sedimentation from the mine. And obviously, if you live near this river and you rely on this river for water, and it's full of that sediment, you are not going to go and collect water from that river. So that's what things look like on one side of the river, but what does it look like on the other side of the river where mining has not happened yet? And that's what I wanted to travel and find out. So from the mining town of Sangareddy, where CBG is based, you drive north through all of the mining sites, and then you come to the Kogan River. You actually have to wade across the river in four-wheel drives because there aren't any bridges nearby to get across. And then once you get on the other side of the river, you spend hours driving through these rocky dirt roads that kind of cut through the forest and the plateaus. And as you can see from the video, I mean, the landscape north is pristine. I mean, the forests, the waterways, the plateaus are completely undisturbed. And the area is home to rich biodiversity, including critically endangered chimpanzees. And just being there, I mean, it's so clear that this landscape and ecosystem just faces such tremendous risk if mining were to happen here. And we know that CBG is exploring in 85 villages in the river, or north of the river, sorry, and that's based on information that we've seen. And so the company has visited these villages, and it's actually drilling holes to better identify the bauxite deposits before they start mining. So I spent a lot of time in 2 villages speaking to people to try to understand their situation better. These are pretty remote villages. They don't have electricity, they don't have plumbing, mobile service is pretty unreliable. And the people there farm crops like rice and sorghum and vegetables on small family plots of land. And then during the dry season, when the fields are fallow and food is scarce, people go to the forests nearby and they forage for nuts and fruit and wild vegetables to get by. And then outside the villages, there are these really large grassy plateaus that people manage collectively, and they use these to graze their livestock. And it's actually under these plateaus where most of the bauxite is located. So when CBG is visiting these villages, it's not really telling people what's going on. It doesn't say, why the company is there, when the mining is going to start, where the mining will occur. That's according to the people that I spoke to. So, I mean, as you can imagine, if you're living in a village like this and CBG is coming to your village, you're going to be really worried. And a lot of them have actually seen the devastation on the other side of the river. So they have a real sense of what may be coming for their villages. So one of the people I spoke to is this woman here. Her name is Kadiatu Ba. She lives in a village called Hore Lari. And one of her first memories is when she was a 7-year-old girl. She remembered an airplane, a white airplane, circling her village. And she now knows that there were mining company people in that airplane. So she's now 70 years old. This was in the 1960s when she had that memory. She's 70 now, and really the rhythms of village life have not changed much since she was a little girl. And the threat of mining has never really gone away her entire life. And now it's especially acute. She says that CBG representatives have visited her village in recent months, but they've never explained why they're there, why they want access to the land. Nonetheless, I mean, Kadiatu is very clear about who should decide what happens to the land that her community is on. She told me, quote, "This land is ours. We inherited it from our fathers. We want to pass it on to our sons. We should decide what happens to this land." Another person I met is this man here, Ibrahima Diallo. Ibrahima is 35 years old. He was born in a different village. It's called Teliwara, and he still lives there now. And like a lot of us, when Ibrahima was growing up, he dreamed of leaving his hometown behind and going to the big city and finding a new life. So when he was in his early 20s, he worked up the courage, but also saved enough money to leave. And he made his way to neighboring Senegal, and he settled in San Luis, which is this bustling coastal city. He ran a business. He stayed there for about 5 years, and things were going pretty well. But he found himself really missing just the peace and the quiet and the beauty of his village and the landscape back home. And he missed his parents and his friends. So he decided to move back, and he now lives in the same thatched hut that he grew up in as a boy. He married a woman from a nearby village, and he's just extremely happy to be back. So CBG has come to his village as well, and he's also worried. He's seen what's happened on the other side of the river in the mining areas, and he's seen how mining has caused, in his words, the total destruction to the way of life there. So I wanted to play a short video of Ibrahima talking about his concerns. So he's speaking in Pular, and we have English subtitles.
Jarama ko Ibrahima Diallo dumo duɓe capantati joyi jeyaɗo Teliwora aray ko minen ɓatti on ɗo ɓanginangol ɗon adunan fo ko fewndi ka leydi amen ga aray min ɓanginani CBG société wiyeteɗo CBG on no fala arde ko amen ga fi golle argo gere leydi amen ndi haray noon meɗe huli tabe bonnu kamen wurata ton tata hara ala ko men wura hande kadi e probléme minage on haray meɗen huli ɗum ɗon kadi ko leydi amen ga e hakkunde jama on haray kadi meɗen huli tawe bonnu canɗiɗi tawata hara dabeji amen ɗin ala ko wura e boye ɗen hara ala ko ñame si tawi no woniri noon haray meɗen tori aduna on fo yewonon men seede ha e mesure ji ƴette fi hara si ɓe ƴetti ko ɓe ƴettata ko min wawa wurude e nokkuji amen ni.
So when we spoke, I mean, Ibrahima had very clear ideas about what should happen if mining comes to his village. You know, he says if CBG comes, it has a responsibility to improve the lives of local people. You know, his village needs better roads, it needs electricity, it needs employment opportunities for people like him. So, you know, he can imagine the community taking a share of the mining revenue and managing that money and deciding what the community needs and making that call. And he also wants to make sure that the farmland, you know, the water, the plateaus, you know, all the stuff that people rely on, those resources are protected as much as possible from the damage caused by mining. And, I mean, really, nearly everybody I spoke to had ideas about what should happen, but also what should not happen if CBG comes. And the community leaders I spoke to, including Ibrahima, really say they want to sit down with CBG and they want to negotiate these ideas directly with CBG on equal footing, and they want to do that before mining starts, and it's too late. And I think ultimately Ibrahima wants the same thing that all of us would want. You know, he wants to stay in his home village, his home, and he wants to provide a good life for himself and his wife. And eventually he wants to have children and he wants to raise them in his village. And, you know, because he left and he went to Senegal and he was drawn back to his home because of its beauty, its quiet, its peace, I think he really understands how special this place is. And he said something to me that has just really stayed with me. He said, quote, "I love Teliwora more than any other place in the world, and I will do anything to stay here." Yes.
Thank you so much for this presentation, and especially by giving both pictures where mining is taking place now, and where it hasn't. So it's a good image for everyone to see how mining can negatively impact communities. And I will be coming back to Mariama Bari, who is working with affected communities from south of Kogon. We saw just the river. So I'm going to ask you the question, can you come back on difficulties and frustration of trying to repair harms, but also to describe the mediation process for affected communities?
Merci Emmanuel, merci de me passer la parole et je remercie tout le monde pour votre présence. Je vais commencer par un peu parler de ma propre expérience en tant qu'activiste sur les questions des droits humains en République de Guinée et aussi expliquer un peu tout ce qu'il y a comme impact soulevé par Amadou Ba dans son intervention, ainsi que d'Austin lié aux activités minières, et parler de comment parfois ça peut être difficile, voire même compliqué de faire face aux impacts quand ils sont commis. Ça fait maintenant une dizaine d'années que je travaille dans ce secteur. Je travaille avec les communautés. Nous contribuons à les organiser, à les accompagner. Et nous vivons avec elles, nous discutons avec elles des impacts qu'elles subissent au quotidien liés aux activités minières. Et il faut dire que ce n'est jamais évident de faire face aux impacts quand ils sont déjà commis. Et ça, mes expériences reposent sur plusieurs autres entreprises, compagnies minières qui travaillent dans d'autres secteurs, notamment le secteur aurifère, mais aussi le fer. Donc c'est pour vous dire combien de fois les communautés souffrent des impacts des activités minières. Et ces impacts, tout à l'heure, Abadou en a parlé, c'est quoi? C'est des questions foncières, c'est-à-dire une pression foncière énorme sur les communautés. Il y a aussi les questions d'accès à l'eau potable, parce que l'activité minière contribue à polluer tout ce qu'il y a comme, on va dire, ressources halieutiques des communautés et ressources en termes d'accès à l'eau pour les communautés, des ressources historiques. Et aussi, c'est le mode de vie qui est complètement bouleversé par les activités minières. Et vous comprendrez que ce changement, on va dire, total de mode de vie qui résulte des activités minières, engrange souvent ce qu'on peut comprendre la frustration des communautés, parce qu'elles sont confrontées aux activités minières, sont confrontées aux impacts de façon quotidienne, mais aussi, et quand il faut trouver des solutions, quand l'impact est commis, souvent c'est des solutions qui ne sont pas assez satisfaisantes, parce que cela ne permet pas aux communautés de retrouver cette ancienne vie qu'elles avaient par le passé, comment elles vivaient par le passé, comment les ressources étaient facilement accessibles par le passé. Donc, cette frustration engrange une certaine, on va dire, crise de confiance, même face aux compagnies minières, parce que les solutions souvent proposées par les compagnies, les entreprises minières qui évoluent dans ce secteur, c'est des mesures qui ne sont pas forcément satisfaisantes aux yeux des communautés, et que parfois cela déborde, ça occasionne des crises de confiance entre les deux parties, c'est-à-dire les communautés qui subissent les impacts, mais aussi les entreprises minières qui cherchent à trouver des solutions qui ne sont pas toujours faciles parce que l'impact est déjà présent. Alors, cette crise de confiance crée, on va dire, une sorte de fossé entre ces deux parties. Et pour parler des communautés vers le sud Kogon, comme l'a soulevé tout à l'heure Emmanuel dans son intervention, c'est-à-dire nous travaillons avec 13 communautés impactées par la compagnie des bauxites de Guinée, c'est la CBG dont Dostine parlait, et ces communautés ont porté plainte contre la CBG au niveau du mécanisme de gestion de plainte de la SFI, où il y a un médiateur qui est là, qui essaie de faire en sorte que les deux parties s'entendent. Et cette médiation a été quand même une sorte d'opportunité pour les communautés, il faut le dire, parce qu'à un moment donné, les communautés ne savaient plus comment porter leur voix, comment est-ce que c'est possible de porter leurs préoccupations au plus haut niveau, parce que parfois elles avaient cette sensation de ne pas être bien écoutées. Et la médiation a été une sorte d'opportunité pour les communautés, ces 13 communautés, pour s'asseoir face à face avec l'entreprise minière, discuter des problèmes, mais aussi essayer de trouver des solutions à ces problèmes-là. Mais vous vous souviendrez, je disais dans le début de mon intervention, que parfois, le fait que il y a les mesures qui ne sont pas forcément satisfaisantes pour les communautés, mais aussi les compagnies minières qui cherchent quand même à trouver des solutions techniques, et cela débouche sur des crises de confiance. se traduit parfois même au sein de cette médiation. La médiation, elle est une opportunité, mais parfois elle a ses limites à cause de la lenteur de la négociation entre les deux parties, mais aussi le fait que les deux parties viennent avec des visions assez différentes de résolution des impacts, parce que voilà, il y a une certaine diversité de perspectives avant que les deux parties ne viennent à la médiation. Donc, cela complique un peu aussi les discussions au sein de la médiation, même si elle est une opportunité aussi pour discuter ensemble des solutions. Et pour ce cas de la médiation que nous menons dans la zone de Sangaré, qui est vers le sud du Congo, je vais juste prendre un exemple assez typique de difficulté de résolution des impacts quand ils sont déjà commis. C'est un peu, vous parlez du village de Fassaliwol, qui fait partie des 13 villages plaignants. Et dans ce village, il y a une rivière qu'on appelle le Fassaliwol. Le Fassaliwol, depuis 2018, elle a commencé à ressentir les impacts liés aux activités minières, parce que c'est une rivière qui s'est aujourd'hui impactée, polluée par les sédiments qui sont drainés par les eaux de ruissellement qui viennent de la mine et d'autres lieux. Donc, cette rivière, de 2018 jusqu'à maintenant, on peine à trouver une solution au problème de pollution. Donc, ça, c'est pour vous expliquer un peu combien de fois, quand l'impact est présent, la difficulté de pouvoir le dresser. Et je vais finir par ceci pour dire que la médiation a quand même offert cette plateforme aux communautés de pouvoir discuter des problèmes, de se mettre face à face. Et c'est un pouvoir, ça a été un pouvoir pour les communautés de rencontrer même le top management de l'entreprise, de discuter avec ces cadres de l'entreprise. Mais à mon sens, c'est important de donner ce pouvoir aux communautés en amont des impacts, avant que les impacts ne soient commis, avant que les impacts ne commencent. Parce que ça ne sert à rien de venir discuter des problèmes quand déjà on a des visions assez différentes de ce qui se passe. Mais si on commence déjà en amont, avant que l'activité elle-même ne commence, on discute ensemble de la résolution et de comment faire face aux problèmes. Je pense que cela peut être bénéfique pour les communautés. Donc pour le moment, je vais me limiter là et peut-être qu'il y aura des discussions pour... Merci.
Thank you so much, Mariana. I know myself trying to help communities to seek justice. It's usually hard to do that and to help communities. So I'm going to move to Natalie, and who has a huge experience worldwide in terms of management of environmental risk. So can you talk about CBG? What goes wrong in human rights due diligence management, and what IDI and other organizations are proposing?
Okay, thank you so much, Emmanuel. And thank you for all my wonderful colleagues for your excellent presentations and just for the work we are doing together, which really is such wonderful work for the communities. And I feel very privileged to be able to work with this group of people. And thank you to all of you for coming today, and those of you online who we can't see. So I want to just shift gears a little. We've heard a lot about what's going on the ground. But I want to take a look at the environmental and social risk management systems that most mines use these days to try to meet the global standards. And I want to unpack what goes so wrong for communities under that approach. And to do that, I'm going to take you back in time about a decade, I wish we could really do that sometimes, to examine what happened the last time CBG wanted to expand its mine, to understand what went wrong. And actually, because I am the last panellist and you've all probably had a long day, and I want to make sure you're paying attention. This is my teacher in me coming out. I'm actually going to ask all of you to spot what went wrong. So it's going to be a little interactive, so you need to pay attention to what I'm saying. Okay. So, let's go back in time to circa 2014, when there's a huge surge in global demand for aluminium products. And CBG wants to meet that demand by expanding its mine to extract the very high quality bauxite south of the Cogon River. But of course, mining infrastructure is very expensive, especially in such a remote location. So CBG needs to raise a huge amount of capital to develop its mine. So it decides to approach the IFC to de-risk the project, and a host of commercial banks for loans. But to secure those loans, it has to show that it can meet IFC's environmental and social performance standards. So CBG does what most project developers do in that situation and hires a team of consultants to conduct environmental and social impact assessments. But what those consultants find is that the people set to be affected by the mine's expansion are terrified. In their report, the impact assessors write, there are serious concerns regarding the survival of the village economy, given the mining plan presented to the communities. The communities already conceive that CBG will come and destroy most of their farmland and pastures. They expressed deep worries, often asking, how are we going to go on living? And the impact assessment then goes on to warn that unless CBG takes a dramatically different approach, most of the villages impacted are likely to suffer a deep, generalised and long-term slide into poverty. And they advise that CBG must respect the clearly expressed need for people to be acknowledged, informed and involved in the expansion project in order to reverse that trend. Now, that was the moment that CBG and its shareholders, Rio Tinto and Alcoa, should have taken that expert advice and entered into a genuine process of involving communities in decision-making about the mine. And IFC and the other lenders should have made that a condition of their loan. And if they'd done so, it could have changed the trajectory of how that project unfolded. But that's not what happens. Instead, that expert advice is ignored and the banks approve the loan anyway. And CBG, with Rio Tinto and Alcoa's support, move full steam ahead with the mine's expansion, essentially sweeping the community's concerns under the carpet. Now, to be fair, CBG did commit to an environmental and social action plan to address the risks identified in the impact assessment. And here's my question to you. Who do you think was involved in designing the mitigation measures in that plan? The lenders, like IFC? Who else? The consultants, all the fly-in consultants who came in. The mining company, maybe probably Rio Tinto and Alcoa, I don't know if they want to say when we get to the discussion, but they may have been involved, and CBG. And who do you think was not involved in designing or agreeing to that plan? The local communities. The communities whose interests and lives were most at stake by the effectiveness of that plan. Can you imagine how that would feel? And in fact, the action plan, which is still available online, it's very weak. If you read it, it's quite evident. It was clearly not commensurate to the risks posed to the communities. And indeed, fast forward 10 years, the most recent independent monitoring report from just last year, 2024, says the risk that livelihood restoration will not be possible for some communities is considered to be high, with the potential that communities will be dependent on CBG for survival through continuous food assistance, and that grievances will multiply. There's just a shocking situation. And that's where the current top-down, disempowering approach to managing risks to communities has gotten us today. So we've been supporting those communities, okay? We don't want to see that happen again. What we're trying to avoid here, why we're here today, is that we want to avoid that same terrible outcome for the communities north of Colgon as CBG expands. There has to be a better approach. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I just want to give you a little bit of context. So I've worked with communities displaced by large-scale investment projects like mines in Guinea and plantations in Cambodia for most of my career. And along with some of you in this room, and probably some of those of you online, I've spent year after year fighting gruelling battles to help these communities secure redress for these devastating impacts that they've suffered. And frankly, I'm sick of it. I'm sick of running around trying to put out fires unnecessarily caused by some of the wealthiest corporations and development institutions of our time. I want to see a systems change that stops the displacement and destruction from happening in the first place. So we wrote a proposal for a new system. A just alternative to development forced displacement. And it's been endorsed so far by more than 60 organisations, both from global organisations, Indigenous coalitions, grassroots organisations, and we invite more endorsements for anyone who wants to put their name on it. And what our proposal calls for is for developers and all the investors and lenders and buyers behind the projects to put in place 6 measures that give communities real agency and power over decisions about projects that pose significant risks to their land and livelihoods. Now, I won't go through the 6 measures in detail. It's hopefully a lot of you have a copy of this and it's available online. But I do want to briefly touch on a few points. The first point is that communities need to have access to independent technical and legal support from the very beginning, so they can fully understand and analyse the project risks and the options available. And so they can weigh up those risks against the realistic development opportunities that may be available if the mine moves forward. Not the false promises that never come to be, but the realistic development opportunities. Second, project developers must involve communities in early decisions about mine design and footprint, with the aim of avoiding harms and displacement to the maximum extent possible, even if it increases project costs upfront. And that means getting the mining engineers talking to communities right at the start to learn how they live their lives, what do their livelihoods involve, and see if they can problem solve together, so that community knowledge and ideas are brought into project design from the very beginning. This really seems like a no-brainer to me, to bring the mining engineers in early to speak directly to the communities and problem solve. Next is that project developers should engage in fair negotiations with communities on the terms that projects can proceed. So we heard Mariam talk about our experience, and particularly Mariam and Nilsson's experience, supporting communities through intensive mediations that are facilitated by the CAO, the Compliance Advisor Ombudsman of the IFC, a lender to CBG, to try to secure remedies. And it's very challenging. But experiences like these, and in other cases we've worked on, have taught us that when done well, communities can have real agency in negotiating agreements through mediation. But why not deploy these consensus-building tools up front to prevent harm before it happens? Now, it's possible that after all of that analysis and negotiation, communities will decide that the trade-offs are just not worth it and they don't want the project to proceed. In those difficult cases, any expropriation of land must meet the international human rights law tests of necessity, proportionality, and genuine public interest. And if the community is Indigenous, there must be free, prior informed consent. But even in those exceptional cases where expropriation is justified on human rights grounds, project developers should still seek to negotiate and reach agreements with communities on things like specific no-go zones, the terms of resettlement, and development benefits. And those agreements can't be empty promises. They must be enforceable by the communities themselves, either through the courts or human rights compliant arbitration. And crucially, the costs of enforcement should not fall on communities. And that brings us to the last pillar of our proposal, which is the role of investors and buyers. All the corporate actors that enable and profit from the mines, upstream and downstream, should use their collective resources to enable this approach. That includes establishing pooled funds administered at arm's length to finance the mediations and the independent legal and technical support to communities. And they should use their leverage by making this approach a condition of financing or procurement. Now, I'll just close by saying the evidence is pretty clear that this approach makes sense for everyone. It gives communities agency and dignity, but it also makes sense for the developers and investors. Projects that forcibly displace people generate conflict, delays, and stranded assets. Projects that respect rights and bring benefits to local communities are far more likely to succeed. So we're calling on global standard setters like the IFC to adopt this approach. But our immediate and most urgent call is for these measures to be put in place for the communities who lie in CBG's expansion zone. We're calling on CBG, Rio Tinto, Alcoa and Dadco, the mine's lenders, as well as all the companies that source from the mine, including Mercedes, BMW, Aldi, Ford, GM, Toyota and Porsche, to all get on board with this approach and start engaging now to show these communities the respect and dignity they deserve. Thank you.
Yeah, we can applaud Natalie. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. And I hope after this session, more of us will join the statement, which is very good. to support those communities. So I'm going to use my privilege as a moderator and come back again to Amadou, asking him a question. Have you tried to reach CBG? And what did they say?
Ok. Il faut noter que la démarche que nous avons est une démarche inclusive et de bonne foi, qui va dans le sens, bien sûr, d'impliquer toutes les parties prenantes. Nous avons bien sûr adressé des correspondances à la CBG. Et au-delà de la médiation qui est en cours, il y a des correspondances qui ont été adressées à la CBG et qui a bien voulu également répondre amicalement à cette correspondance. Et je pense qu'il y a en tout cas une fenêtre ouverte pour pouvoir discuter de ce que nous avons comme préoccupation par rapport en fait au projet Nord-Cogon, de ce que les communautés ont également comme peur ou inquiétude par rapport à l'extension des travaux de la CBG de ce côté. Donc je pense que de façon générale, nous avons en fait une approche qui se veut vraiment inclusive, qui veut que les communautés, la CBG et nous, acteurs de la société civile et bien sûr les représentants de l'État, nous discutions et que nous ayons en fait une même compréhension des enjeux et surtout les mêmes approches de solutions allant dans le sens de mettre bien sûr en premier lieu l'intérêt bien sûr de l'environnement, l'intérêt des communautés, mais l'intérêt du pays parce que quand l'environnement est protégé, quand les communautés sont protégées, c'est bien sûr l'intérêt de l'État, c'est bien sûr également l'intérêt et surtout la responsabilité des entreprises.
Thank you. Yes, I'm coming to you. Do you have something to add?
Thank you, Manuel.
Yeah, I just wanted, and yes, thank you, Amadou, and of course our message to CBG is exactly as we've said. We want to. Do I turn that up? Oh.
Did you? Your speaker.
I don't know why that's happening. Does anyone at the back? Oh, it works. Okay. So our message, of course, is let's work. It's not easy. It's not easy to do. Mining is inherently destructive, and I don't think everyone has to be clear-eyed about that. But we feel that if the right attitude is there and the investment is there, and the communities have the support that they need, things can happen in a way that's better for all the actors, as I said, and that really is our message to CBG, and we're happy that CBG is hopefully, responding well to that. But I also just want to make the point that it is not just on CBG. It's Rio Tinto, it's Alcoa, it's DADCO. They're not only the shareholders of CBG, they are also the off-takers. They are relying on that bauxite for their customers. So they have a huge human rights responsibility here to contribute to this approach, and it's on them as much as it is on CBG. And it really is also on all those car companies and energy companies that source from the mine to get on board with this approach. They all need to support CBG and the communities to find this better way.
Okay. Bah?
Oui, dans cette optique, en fait, déjà, il y a une ouverture qui est faite avec, bien sûr, les entreprises du secteur de l'automobile avec qui nous sommes en discussion, bien sûr, par rapport à un certain nombre de normes à respecter, par rapport, en fait, au comportement qu'elles devraient avoir au regard, bien sûr, de certaines législations qui sont en vigueur dans certains pays. Et c'est le lieu de dire que nous sommes également en discussion avec des entreprises du secteur énergétique, notamment allemands, avec la contribution, bien sûr, de nos collègues des organisations de la société civile allemande, représentée ici dans la salle par notre collègue Sarah et ses autres collègues. Je pense que la perspective est sur une bonne voie pour embarquer tout le monde, non seulement les entreprises en amont, mais également de l'autre côté. Et il y a pratiquement de très bonnes discussions pour le moment encore avec ces différentes entreprises pour pouvoir ensemble trouver une voie de collaboration allant dans le sens de privilégier les droits humains.
Thank you so much, Ba. I know that we have several representatives of companies and financiers of CBG online. And I don't know if they would like to take the floor, but if not, I'm going to open the floor to everyone. I don't know. Yes? Okay. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Ah, okay. Please, go ahead.
Oui, merci. Deux questions très rapides. Je m'appelle Pierre Petit de Pasquale, je suis le directeur des standards pour IRMA, une organisation paritaire internationale. Ma première question, vous n'en avez pas parlé, c'est l'usine de Kamsar, où il y a le traitement du minerai de bauxite. Est-ce que vous avez des idées sur les implications que ça pourrait avoir si cette mine augmente de 30% la capacité, alors que la situation sanitaire, a priori, elle est assez dramatique déjà à Kamsar? Et l'autre question, c'est, et avec raison, vous parlez beaucoup de la responsabilité de la CBG. Où est-ce que vous en êtes dans le plaidoyer vis-à-vis du gouvernement guinéen? Parce que le code minier, il y a beaucoup de clauses qui sont très bien, je pense, sur les plateformes de concertation, sur les fonds de compensation, la réhabilitation progressive des sites, etc., mais qui manifestement ne sont pas mises en œuvre. Merci.
Thank you so much. Do you have someone else? Yes, Sarah?
Thank you. Sarah Gur of German Watch. I had a question because I know that bauxite mining is, it puts a huge pressure on land and communities, and I was wondering if you know of other expansion plans of other mines in Guinea that will lead to the same results that you have presented. And the other question is that also related to the policy level in Guinea. I know that the referentiel is being discussed in Guinea, and I was wondering in how far the referentiel would cover some of these points and demands you make in the policy proposal if it were to be implemented properly.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Is anyone in the room? Is there anyone in the room who would like to? So we can take a series of questions and then. No? Online? Yeah. Please.
Good. Ouais. Donc, on évoquait la possibilité pour les communautés d'être associées aux bénéfices des projets miniers. Et ma question, c'est est-ce que finalement, dans le contexte particulier de la Guinée, une telle perspective serait même viable au vu de la défiance qu'il peut y avoir aujourd'hui à l'égard des opérateurs miniers, à l'égard du passif terrible qui existe déjà vis-à-vis des communautés, mais aussi dans la perspective qu'ont les entreprises minières, dans la façon dont elles exploitent les projets en Guinée. Parce que c'est-à-dire que le fait de s'engager dans une logique de co-bénéfice avec les communautés, ça voudrait dire aussi que la façon dont ils exploitent leurs projets sur le long terme les obligerait à continuer de partager les bénéfices avec les communautés, même dans les situations où l'exploitation minière, par exemple, devrait réduire de volume en fonction des dynamiques de prix sur les marchés internationaux.
Thank you so much. Who is going first? So can you respond and then we can take another series.
Ok, merci. En fait, l'augmentation de la production de la CBG va bien sûr avoir des impacts au niveau de l'usine de traitement de Kamsar parce que c'est la bauxite brute qui est prise de l'autre côté qui est un peu traitée avant exportation. Donc ça peut avoir bien sûr des impacts. Mais les études d'impact de la CBG nous disent qu'ils ont mis en place des mesures allant dans le sens de capter. Ils sont des capteurs comment je peux dire ça, de poussière, pour éviter que cette poussière ne se répande sur la ville, avec des technologies allant dans le sens de le réduire. Bon, en principe, il revient à l'Agence guinéenne d'évaluation environnementale, à travers le laboratoire national, de faire ce travail et de faire ce travail de monitoring pour comprendre un peu l'impact de l'usine, en fait, des travaux de l'usine sur la santé communautaire. Alors, par rapport au plaidoyer que nous avons engagé ce plaidoyer avec le gouvernement depuis un certain temps. Pour avoir d'abord contribué à l'élaboration, nos organisations ont contribué à l'élaboration des textes d'application du Code minier. Nous avons commencé ce plaidoyer à partir de là pour demander au gouvernement de mettre en place en fait des mesures et surtout des structures qui peuvent surveiller l'exploitation minière. Et c'est dans ce sens que je rebondis sur la question de Sarah. En 2018, nous avons commencé un plaidoyer qui va dans le sens de l'élaboration d'une norme nationale contraignante en matière de compensation, d'indemnisation et de réinstallation des communautés impactées par les projets de développement en Guinée. Et c'est suite à une étude que nous avons eu à faire qui a révélé que nous avons des pratiques disparates à travers le pays, où des entreprises, chacune, en fonction de ces normes, imposent en fait de la réinstallation comme elle veut, ou impose en fait des grilles tarifaires de compensation comme elle veut. Dans une même localité, vous voyez par exemple deux entreprises qui appliquent deux normes différentes. Et dans un pays qui se veut indépendant et qui a normalement en fait la responsabilité d'imposer son cadre juridique et réglementaire. Donc on a travaillé avec le gouvernement pour produire ce document et ça a été vraiment une collaboration parce que nous avons nous-mêmes contribué au comité technique qui a rédigé en fait le document. Mais depuis 2018, figurez-vous bien, on a du mal, on a tout poussé, on a du mal à faire valider ce document. À un certain moment, on soupçonnait en fait des lobbies qui étaient derrière pour pouvoir empêcher l'adoption du document. Et bon, de l'autre côté aussi, il y a une raison politique qui peut expliquer. Cette raison, c'est que c'est l'instabilité politique que nous avons connue depuis un certain temps avec, disons, le coup d'État qui est arrivé. Donc, il y a pratiquement ce dialogue avec le gouvernement, mais qui fonctionne en dents de scie en fonction, bien entendu, de ceux qui sont soit dans le gouvernement, soit ils sont ouverts parce qu'ils comprennent un peu les enjeux, mais souvent, ils ne durent pas parce que il y a l'instabilité politique. Donc, à chaque fois, on a en fait des membres qui sont changés. Donc, ça nous ramène encore à zéro. Et je vous dis bien, depuis 2018, nous sommes en train de mettre la pression sur le gouvernement. On a tout fait pour que ce document soit adopté, pour que ça soit, en fait, ça serve de norme pour protéger les communautés. Mais jusque-là, on a le projet de décret depuis plus de 8 mois entre le secrétariat général du gouvernement, le ministère de l'Environnement, mais pratiquement rien n'a encore bougé parce que ce n'est pratiquement pas une priorité pour le gouvernement. Le gouvernement a pour priorité d'élaborer les textes d'application pour permettre de récupérer la rente de façon très rapide, parce que ce qui peut financer le budget et financer en fait l'action du gouvernement. Donc, c'est une préoccupation majeure et nous continuons à pousser avec bien sûr plusieurs leviers.
Yeah. Please, Mariam.
Moi, j'aimerais juste ajouter sur la perspective des communautés en termes d'ouverture sur les questions d'activité minière. Il faut dire que pour bon nombre de communautés, souvent les compagnies minières sont vues comme une sorte de, on va dire, d'opportunité, parce que ça va créer de l'émulation, il y aura beaucoup de machines, il y aura du monde et il y a cette aspiration pour les communautés de travailler dans l'entreprise minière parce que voilà, ça va créer de l'emploi. Mais parfois, il y a une petite, pas petite, mais il y a une désillusion parce que c'est pas parce qu'il y a du monde où les machines fonctionnent, il y a de l'émulation que ça va forcément créer de l'emploi. Et après, elles sont confrontées aux impacts miniers, parce que c'est ce qui leur reste souvent, hein, l'impact sur la terre, sur les questions, l'employabilité, ça c'est autre chose. Il y a aussi cette question d'accès à l'eau potable, le mode de vie qui change complètement, la vie devient un peu plus chère. Mais qu'à cela ne tienne, les communautés ne sont pas fermées aux entreprises minières. Ce qu'elles souhaitent plutôt, c'est pouvoir partager les bénéfices, pouvoir aussi bénéficier de tout ce qu'il y a comme retombées positives de l'entreprise minière. Donc c'est un peu ça que je voulais ajouter sur ce que Amadou a dit. Voilà, merci.
Oui, peut-être par rapport aux bénéfices partagés, le cadre légal guinéen est clair. L'article 130 du Code minier prévoit que les entreprises exploitant les matières premières de catégorie 1 et 2, notamment la bauxite et le fer, contribuent à hauteur de 0,5% de leur chiffre d'affaires annuel au développement des collectivités locales. Ça, les entreprises le payent. Quand vous évaluez ça avoisine en fait beaucoup de millions de dollars en fait sur toute l'étendue du territoire par rapport en fait à cette contribution au développement local. Mais où il y a le bas blesse au niveau bien sûr, je dis bien, de cette instabilité politique et institutionnelle, où vous avez cette année des maires élus, et 2 ans après, vous avez des délégations spéciales qui sont là. Donc, la trajectoire de l'utilisation de ce fonds n'est pas en fait rectiligne. Ça ne permet pas en fait d'avoir une visibilité sur ce que en fait les entreprises peuvent apporter comme contribution au développement local, puisque cette instabilité ne permet pas pratiquement d'avancer sur des projets structurants allant dans le sens d'aider les communautés à mieux profiter.
Thank you. Ba, Dustin, do you need to come in? No? Natalie?
No, it's okay.
Okay. I think we have some question online. Yeah, we can see. There is Jimmy Mungurieke. Okay.
No, just a second.
Okay.
Yes, we have a few questions online, but I also see that a couple of participants want to unmute themselves to make comments or ask their questions. And one of them, although the name is not super clear or self-explanatory, but I'm assuming that is a representative of CBG. So we might want to give them an opportunity to comment on the presentations of the panelists. So participant SC, I'm going to allow you to intervene.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I wish you could have seen me so that you can put a face on my voice and name. So my name is Saran Kamara. I work at CBG. I am head of social performance. I have been at this position for a year now. Please excuse my English. I'm a French speaker, and I'm from Guinea. I was born and raised in France, but I loved Guinea so much that I felt like I needed to come work here. And I feel very grateful to be working for a mining company and with the communities and for them. So thank you very much for holding such a forum, allowing different kind of parties to give their point of view on the situation of the energy transition globally, but also about the mining situation in Guinea. So thank you for this forum, and thank you to the NGOs for their work among the communities. It's very important to have some people that give them voice and power over those big mining companies and the state. So thank you all for that. I had received IDI report a few days ago, so I had a chance to read it through. IDI has been contacting us. Unfortunately, it was a little bit late. We didn't have much time to really react, and I wish I could have met them while they were in Guinea. It would have been very interesting to have a discussion in person, but I have the luxury of meeting with Mariama and people from Adremgi and the CECID during our mediation sessions that are, like Mariama said, very long, but we reached some results. So just very quickly, I think the approach of CBG is very different from 10 years ago. I've seen, here we have the report that had been issued, I think, 10 years ago, while CBG was doing its extension project. And it's true, it's just at that time that CBG starting to put in place, IFC performance standards and all international performance standards. Before that, CBG was just complying to the national law. And it was just then that we started, this path. It has been a continuous improvement since then. And we're very happy to say that, back in the days, 10 years ago, we had, I think, 5 people in the social performance department. Today, I have almost 40 people working with me, including people from the communities, because we think the most transparent way for communities to know what's going on is to have them on board with us. So this is part of the continuous improvement. And also including the communities in our decision-making, in our management plan, management systems, environmental and social is crucial for us, because we've learned among the years that the people that will know more about the impact are on them, on their lives, and on the environment of the people living there. So this is really something that is going on right now. This is why when you went to the north of Kogon, you could meet people having met with CBG representatives already. I think in the north of Kogon, we are now at like 40 meetings. And for the south of Kogon, to this day, we had like 461 meetings. Maybe we had some last week, but I don't have the numbers. But this is to tell you that we have a very important consultation with the communities, and we try to implement their ideas as much as we can. I can imagine that you have a terrible image of us right now with everything that has been said. But I want to make sure to everyone that CBG will never leave anyone with no livelihood. Every time we take a land, we develop what we call livelihood restoration programs that can be very challenging sometimes, but overall that are working well. And we are following up with the communities after the program is done to make sure they still have a good livelihood. We have a very big care on vulnerable groups. So we have a special care for them as well. And I want to say that the intervention of, I don't remember his name, but about the plaidoyer towards the Guinean government is really something that can be of interest for all of us, because right now I can say very surely that CBG is one of the most responsible mining companies in Guinea today. We're trying our best to limit the impacts on the environment and on social. However, some of the impact of other mining companies around us make our efforts of less impact. So if this plaidoyer could be done for all the mining companies in Guinea, we will put all of our efforts together to limit the impacts, because like Natalie said, mining activities are impactful, unfortunately. So what we can do is really limit that. And also, Mr. Ba was talking about this référentiel that they are trying to put together for all the mining companies for the compensation of land. That will really be of good use even for CBG, because there is not something as such in Guinea for now. So we are doing our best with consultants to try to Guinean consultants to have an idea on the land value, and we're trying to put our matrix based on that. But it would be great if we had a référentiel that will just align all the mining companies on the same amount of compensation. So really, like they said, we are really open for this dialogue, and we think dialogue is always it's where ideas are are born, right? So we really look forward to discuss with you guys. I think we've talked about mid-December in Conakry. So we're looking forward to it, and we're going to keep the mediation going the right way with Mariam. And we hope other mining companies will follow us in our path. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your contribution. Do you have someone else online?
I would like to ask a few of the questions that came in writing, and thanks, Sarah, again for the intervention. And for sure, the mediation has been a challenge for both parties, and it's a work in progress. And as the panelists said, once the impacts are there, it's really, really difficult to resolve them, even when you have the goodwill from both parties. And that's why we are advocating for this new approach. So I want to take a few questions that relates to the policy proposal and this approach to negotiate upfront from the communities, because there's a question about what it looks like to have a transparent and adequate consultation, but I know that what you are advocating is beyond consultation. So can you tell us a bit more about that? And the second question is, are there any other examples of community benefit agreements signed with other companies, and are these public, and whether they should be public as a resource to all the CSOs and communities out there who are trying to negotiate agreements with the mining companies?
Okay, so I guess I'll start to answer that. I just actually want to start by thanking Saran, who I'm really looking forward to meeting when I can when I go to Guinea or virtually, and I really appreciate, Saran, that you put forward your point of view, CBG's point of view. We might have some divergence of opinion on, for example, the effectiveness of the livelihood programs for communities, but I really do appreciate that outreach and that real, I think, genuine willingness to engage and do better as CBG expands north of Kogon. We're very hopeful about that. So on to the questions. So the question of consultation sort of versus negotiation. Yeah, I mean, our view is that in situations like this, where communities, you know, have lived on and really regard themselves as the owners and the stewards of this land and resources for generations, that consultation, even when it's done well, is sort of patronising. You know, if a company was coming to take my land, to develop my land, I want them to give me all the information, and I want them to negotiate with me. And I don't see why these communities should be treated any differently. So, I mean, that's just my first reaction. But of course, in practice, as I think we all know, consultation is done very poorly. And it's not really a situation where communities have all the information about the risks and the options, and they're able to, you know, express in a free forum without any pressure. I'm not talking about, you know, in all the cases that we work on generally, you know, their opinions. And even when they are, very often we don't see those views and perspectives end up in the mitigation measures, in the avoidance measures, and in the action plans. So because we've seen that fail again and again, that's why we're saying we have to look at this whole approach differently. And because we've spent so many days and weeks and months and years, in fact, in mediations with a neutral mediator and with, you know, supporting the communities so that the power imbalances are addressed, and they're across the table from each other, the communities and the company, negotiating, discussing, developing relationships. I can often see, I'm sitting in those mediations, and I can often see, gosh, wouldn't this be good if this had been done right at the beginning? wouldn't it be good if this is what, I don't know how familiar you are with Performance Standard 1 of the IFC's performance standards, but if this is how it was implemented, it would be a much better approach from the beginning. And I truly believe that approach to problem solving, that approach to a win-win agreement making would end up in a better outcome for everyone. So I think everyone is missing an opportunity by this sort of top-down, fly-in consultant approach to risk management. The other question, about community agreements. So it is definitely, it's a great point, and it's definitely an issue that we need more transparency around company community agreements. In fact, Rio Tinto, if you're on the line, or Alcoa, and you've got any to share publicly, please, we encourage you to put them out there. What we do often see is sort of summaries on various databases rather than entire, contracts, agreements. But recently there have been quite a few publications about agreement making, and I think that we can all learn from them. And I think what they're showing is that they are a good foundation for a better approach, but there are still weaknesses in, whether they sort of encompass both the avoidance and mitigation part and the benefit sharing part, and they're implementable and binding and enforceable. So what are the monitoring processes around it? How can communities enforce these agreements if they're not stuck to by the companies? So yeah, I don't know if anyone has anything to add about it. Oh, you in fact might, Emmanuel, about agreement making.
Yes. Okay, thank you so much for this contribution. I think we are running out of the time. I'm going just to wrap up with some key points. The first one is the anticipation of the harm, especially in the case of North Kogon. I think it's one of the points which was raised by the communities, but also by the panelists. The second one is make sure that communities can be part of the discussion, can be consulted and give their consent. The third one is the question of reparation. Everyone came back and talked about reparation. When there is harm, then companies and government should be engaged to give reparation to communities. And the other one is about the statements. So I think this is a good document. If after this meeting people can join, or individual or organization, I think that will be also good. And the fourth or fifth one, I think it toward the Guinean government, because we know that government has the role to play in the protection of human rights. The last is, I think, like everywhere in Africa, we are talking about lack of matrix, how you calculate compensation. I think it's key, and I hope that NGOs and all parties will work on this. But also, we are going to take the discussion forward. It's not just for here, so we are continuing to talk with all parties, companies, states, but also NGOs, national and international, working on CBG mine. I would like to end by saying thank you so much for EIDI, Lead the Charge, Action Mine Guinea, but also to all participants online and in this room for your participation, and I hope that we are going to take forward this discussion. Thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. I think we have some time to connect outside after this event. There will be light refreshments, I think. So please feel free to find us there, ask your questions, and find the panelists especially. Thanks.